How to be more assertive while still gaining respect. Often, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to our interactions with others. More specifically, we are often forced to choose between being assertive and standing up for ourselves and being nice. In other words, these two options often seem mutually exclusive. It seems as though being nice often comes with the prerequisite that you should also be a pushover. This is something of a problem, seeing as most of us want to be treated with respect and not become a human doormat. But likewise, most of us also like to think of ourselves as nice, decent people, and we don't want to cause anyone else undue harm or upset. In this presentation, we'll discuss how you can be assertive while at the same time inspiring respect in others. Keep your cool. Assertive is a good word because it's subtly different from aggressive or angry. When you are assertive, you are simply asserting yourself, which broadly means you're stating what it is that you want or how you feel. This is different from being passive or inactive and letting things just happen to you. But it's also different from being angry, aggressive or explosive. When we lose our cool and shout and rave, we actually come across as a little unhinged and certainly rattled. These reactions do not help us gain respect because they just make us seem out of control. Know what you want. In order to assert, you first need to know what it is that you wish to assert in the first place. In other words, if you're making some kind of point or you're putting the world to rights, then you better know exactly what it is that you're trying to say. Raging because you're unhappy with a situation makes you seem like a whiner or a crybaby. Instead, tell the person who has wronged you what you want and what you expect them to do about it. Don't make excuses. A lot of people will tell you never to say sorry. That's a big commitment, so I wouldn't necessarily go that far. But what I would say is that many of us say sorry too much, and it can actually make us seem a little weak at times. Instead of apologizing then, be willing to ruffle a few feathers sometimes. Be fair, but be firm when you need to be. How to have 100% certainty in your entrepreneurial venture. One of the things that is most responsible for holding us back is a lack of certainty. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that we unfortunately lack faith in our own ideas and plans, and that in turn prevents us from ever giving them the best chance possible. This is why you often don't work out, and it's certainly why you don't invest time, money and effort into that entrepreneurial venture. Think about it. You might think of yourself as lazy, or as flaky, or generally as someone who doesn't see things through to completion. But ask yourself how often you take time off work. You go to work every single day and do the things you need to do there every single day, no matter how tired or uninspired you are. And why is that? It's because you have certainty. You're willing to invest that kind of time and effort because you know that you'll get paid every single day. And if you knew that your workouts would get you into incredible shape, then you will be able to hit the gym every single day. We don't because we think we'll give up before it happens, or because we don't trust in the routine or in our own bodies. If you knew that your entrepreneurial venture was destined for greatness, you would find time every day to make it happen. So, how do you know? 1. Redefine success. Rethink what success means to you. Perhaps you don't need to be super rich. Aim for something lower to begin with and be happy to reach that point. You'll probably find that you can be just as happy this way. 2. Follow a blueprint. Being an entrepreneur doesn't always need to mean breaking the mold. In fact, a lot of the most successful businesses simply recycle well-known strategies and well-known methodologies. Open up a high street store. Open up a hair salon. Take a business that you know works and then, well, do that. 3. Bootstrap. Bootstrapping means that you're going to fund your big picture with smaller and less exciting business strategies. That may mean, for example, that you sell a product in order to fund a much bigger product. Or it might mean selling a service while using the time left over to work on R&D. Oh, and finally, believe in yourself. Believe you can do anything, and you'll be one step closer to making your vision a reality. How to overcome social anxiety easily. Social anxiety is an incredibly crippling condition. Being afraid to speak up essentially renders us voiceless, which in turn means we become passengers in our own lives. We end up with no say about what we do, what we achieve, where we go, or who we become. So what can you do to start kicking some ass again? Let's take a look at how you can become socially bulletproof. Understand where social anxiety comes from. Social anxiety comes from a desire not to be embarrassed, shamed, or hurt. This is an evolutionary response that is intended to prevent us from making matters worse and to protect us from damaging our own likelihood of survival. When we want to impress someone or make a good impression, we begin to picture all the ways that the interaction could go wrong. And in doing so, we end up triggering a fight or flight response. Only this freezes our ability to make a rational decision and makes us more likely to embarrass ourselves. So, what can you do to prevent this fate? Practice makes perfect. The first objective is to discredit the worst-case scenarios that you're picturing in your head and to start picturing the best-case scenarios. Start picturing yourself impressing the people you're talking to and making a great impact. Now, that's easier said than done, though, seeing as this reaction is something that has become deeply ingrained. And this is why we might use a technique from cognitive restructuring that is known as hypothesis testing. This means you test the notion that you might embarrass or upset yourself and thereby prove to yourself that you're wrong. And you do this by facing those fears and by testing the worst-case scenarios. So, for example, if you were worried that you're going to embarrass yourself by stuttering, then you could test that theory by purposefully stuttering in conversations. Do this enough times and you'll prove to yourself that no one laughs and no one thinks less of you. After all, times have changed since our limbic systems evolved. The problem, of course, is practicing all this in a way that won't cause lasting damage. So try going to more parties where you only know a few people. Try speaking to strangers in the street or in stores. And each time you do, practice putting yourself out there and even intentionally embarrassing yourself. That's how you become desensitized, and that's how you become socially limitless. How to speak more confidently in any situation. Talking is something that most of us do on a daily basis. As such, most of us will probably say that, for the most part, we feel pretty good doing it. We can talk to our parents, our friends, our partners. But then, when we really need that gift of the gab, it can end up letting us down. This is what happens when we're in a physical or verbal confrontation. It's what happens when many of us go on dates, and it's what happens when we're in interviews. The problem isn't talking. The problem is talking confidently. So in this presentation, we're going to look at how you can always do that, no matter the circumstances. Tip 1. Stand up. The first tip is to fix your body language, and specifically, that means you should stand more erect with your chest somewhat puffed out. Doing this will immediately make you take up more physical space, making you more dominant and helping you to at least seem more confident. At the same time, this will help with the acoustics of your voice and mean that everything you say comes out louder and more clearly. Tip 2. Speak more slowly. The more nervous we are, the faster we tend to talk. This has the effect of making our voice sound higher pitched, weaker, and ultimately less confident. Your job then is to try and overcome this by speaking more slowly. This makes you sound instantly deeper and more confident, and it makes the content of what you're saying seem more considered and trustworthy. Tip 3. Breathe. If you are panicked and if you're shaking, then you will sound nervous. That stands to reason. Try to get your physiological response under control then. The best way to do this is to breathe more slowly and more fully, which will help to get your parasympathetic nervous system back under control so that your heart stops racing. Tip 4. Relax. When you are nervous, the release of hormones and neurotransmitters tends to make you tense up and become more physically anxious. By relaxing, you can counteract this fact and you can loosen the muscles around your throat and vocal cords, making you sound deeper, more powerful, and more confident. And finally, tip 5, make eye contact. Often the best way to become more confident is to act more confident until that becomes a reality. And one of the best ways to act more confident? Make eye contact with whoever it is that you're talking to.